Chapter 11, My Suspicions. Rener Calo. What does it mean to become a war general? For me, it only means one word, Akea. I had spent countless moon turns planning to take Akea back. The Emperor did it in less than 10 moon turns, and I was almost certain that I could do the same. The lands were beginning to split, citizens were having doubts about the Emperor's rule, but how could I sustain the people's doubts? How would I be able to convince these Akeans if the Emperor had the power of charisma? One word from that mouth of his and those who were boiling with rage would submit themselves to him as though nothing happened. This power binds Akea tightly. I have supporters all over the land, and our numbers are slowly increasing. I glanced at the report provided to me by one of the messengers and skimmed through it, taking note only of the figures written, a steady increase. Many people were enlisting to support the call of a far greater organization, the Masked Warriors, to bring forth a better rule to Akea. The Masked Warriors started with a group of palace soldiers discussing the things we saw when we fought on the battlefields. Our observations were the actual accounts of these events, and no one could tell them more honestly than our ranks. When a sword was raised, we were the ones staring blindly into them as Sisis's rays hit the blade. When an arrow is released, our bodies become their moving targets. This is why soldiers laugh at historians. Historians may be knowledgeable and prolific, but try reading a soldier's journal side by side with a historian's narration, and you will see the difference. Historians may give the facts, but soldiers have hearts that reverberate with chaste and melancholic declarations. In the past, after a battle, we would gather in inns and celebrate because we had never lost in battle. How could we? The rebellions were small and afforded barely a scratch on our pride. In inns, we would dance like madmen and sing like there was no tomorrow. We would wink naughtily at the bar ladies and, in the mornings, find ourselves back in our stations. But while quelling reports of an insignificant insurgency in the south, something changed. One of us died, leaving us with his notes. It was nosy of me to leaf through his journal's pages, but as soon as I started reading, I was unable to put down his writings. It was spelled out for me, for all of us, how each war we ever fought was a sham to keep the people from raising arms against the palace. It was a disconcerting matter. We took our comrades' things and burned them with his body. Not many weeks after that, we were called into the war room. Another rebellion had started. This time, it was in the Akea Islands. According to reports, they had fortified the docks with machines that shot out gravel and metal balls at long ranges. We had never heard of something like this in the past. The battles were all fought over terrain, and most of us were carrying swords or axes, anything easy to handle with our bare hands. Mechanical armories used to be irrelevant in war. Regardless, we were deployed to the islands. Upon reaching the docks, we were greeted by metal balls that flew up in the air. If one hit us, it would have smashed us against the ground. We could easily have avoided the cannonballs if we had been on flat ground. The problem was, we were aboard ships, and this meant that if any of these balls did hit the ship, we would have sunken fast. The lives of the few soldiers who could not swim were in peril. I jumped into the water as soon as a metal ball lacerated the air and shattered the wooden deck of the ship. It was still a long way to the docks, but most of the soldiers swam towards it. It was either swim or drown from the shipwreck that pulled everything beside it spiraling into the depths of the ocean. The soldiers came in big numbers and outnumbered the men on the docks, and as soon as that happened, the metal balls stopped firing at the ships. We scanned the area and got a hold of one of the leaders. He was an old man whose face was littered with scars. He did not speak much, but we were able to get the most valuable piece of information from him. It was an instruction from the palace. If the docks were under siege, they were to fire the metal balls. We realized that they only retaliated because they believed they were under attack. I showed the instructions to a few selected soldiers. It was then that we hinted that the game our dead comrade talked about in his notes was true. Could it be a ploy to have citizens killed to quell any threats to the palace? It was brilliant, and yet, it was also unheard of in all my years as a soldier of Akea. But if there was fear stemming from within the palace, that only meant one thing, that the foundation of the Emperor's rule was weak. He knew that the only way to hostage the people at bay was to keep them from causing havoc in Akea, to keep the people scared. The palace soldiers were used, not the way we vowed to serve, not on a platter but rather on a frying pan. Those who survived were living proof of that. Soon after, I called a meeting with a few other soldiers whom I trusted. They agreed almost instantly to investigate the strategies and these unconfirmed actions of the Emperor. The sessions that followed were shrouded in secrecy because should the Emperor find out, he could easily have our heads for treason. But at the back of our heads, we asked, was it true, then? Did Emperor McQuinn storm air and kill Northsome Mendel Amark? Was the Emperor holding each citizen by their throats, staging these fake wars and rebellions, and sacrificing innocent lives because his rule was not entirely, legitimately his? And even more, we asked ourselves, did all these justify the uprising that we were brewing? I shook my head and burned the note that I was holding. There was no need for any evidence to be discovered. It was treasonous to even think of a rebellion when you served the palace, even more so as one of the 14 war generals serving Akea. When the Emperor returns from his voyage, I would ask for his leave on a pretense of reuniting the land, but instead, I would sow the seeds of doubt, hoping that this time, it would run deeply rooted in every Akean's mind, leaving it ample time to grow.